All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
What am I doing? I don't know. I've just come to for a moment. Tony, I blame you for any problem.
Thanks, Tony.
We're off to a rickety start here.
Oh, my God. How dare you, Tony?
Thanks, Tony.
Tony is here. Kim's here. I've got my favorite Britisher waiting. We started a few minutes late. Again, I blame Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
Most of you watching replay, so it probably doesn't matter, but still, it's good to start the new week by blaming someone for the problems of the last week. So there's much to do today. As you know, on Mondays we do True Crime Corner. We'll do that bottom of the hour. As you're also aware, we talk about animals on Monday. That'll be in the second hour, the last segment in the show. We've got a lot of politics with the South Carolina primary having gone down. Trump has just appealed his decision in the New York case. That's the Judge Engoron, or Engoron, as people say. I really don't know whether it's Engoron or Engoron. It just feels like Engoron is not right. I feel like Engoron would be more right, but I don't really know. So, anyway, I'm glad that you're all here. I'm glad that we could get things started, and I do have a special guest, so without any further delay, Anthony Davis had a great show yesterday, said Spencer.
I'll have to ask him about it.
I hope he hasn't exhausted himself with that great show yesterday. Then he won't bring anything to this show. I'd rather hear that he was sort of meh yesterday. Then I know he'll, he'll show up in the second half of the ball game and really bring it. I don't know how to do the calculation on that, but
The Mark Thompson Show.
Let's do it. He is my favorite Britisher. Where's my British music? There it is.
There it is.
Anthony Davis, you handsome fool. Look at you. He is the creator of the 5-Minute News. He is the MeidasTouch host. He is loved by many. And now he's here in America trying to civilize us. Thank you, Anthony Davis. Wow.
It's
welcome, sir.
Engoron.
It is Engoron?
Engoron. That was the only one you didn't say.
And it is Engoron. It's not Engoron. I hear Engoron a lot.
Yeah, I think they're
But you're saying it's definitely Engoron.
Engoron, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm saying it with a British confidence. I could be completely wrong.
I was going to say where you do say it. This is the Brits have been getting by with this crap for forever.
Right.
That's how you took over the world with that crap.
Engoron. I was actually looking at the number of countries that have colonized this planet, and the British really did take much of it by quite a large margin. Mark, I was looking at all the various empires over the centuries.
Yes.
And I don't know how, because, the British are an interesting bunch, but they really did pull a fast one on much of the world, and I can only apologize.
Well, we're very much into apologies on this show. It's very funny that you would say.
And I wanted to apologize to the Asian community, the Asian American community.
Well, I don't know if that's the right apology, though. I think
the British could apologize to the Asian community as well.
Yes.
And certainly to the... I actually remember, I'm old enough to remember Hong Kong being returned back.
Sure.
The British giving Hong Kong back.
Oh, that's right. Of course. What am I thinking? Yeah, that's right.
It wasn't actually that long ago. Maybe, 25
1999 was the last year that the Brits had it, I think.
And I remember that being very ceremonial. But here's the caveat to this. Whenever a country has said, something, I think we're done with your British Commonwealth and we'd like to go it alone, the British have gone, okay, have your country back. Not in all cases, but in many cases. Certainly when you look to some of
in the new age of this generation and the generation just prior, it seems as though the Brits are cooler with that than they were. I mean, right, when they were really in their and of course their dominance was, this is kind of a little bit of a digression, but it's kind of a cool digression. Their dominance was really related to their their military and their command of the seas, wasn't it?
The Navy, the British Royal
Right.
Navy, yeah, absolutely. They had the best ships, the fastest ships, the biggest ships, the most bigly ships. They had the great Royal Navy, yeah, and that's really what did it. It's that was how you got
and
about.
so-
I mean, there was no aircrafts, right?
Right.
So-
I mean, it's why the Belgian Congo, as it was called, right? That was all as a result of and many those countries that were dominant from Scandinavia that had these huge ships that were able to circumnavigate the globe. I mean, it was oddly weighted toward those countries, I believe. Yes.
The Vikings, basically. I mean, they had the ships, and they were the ones that came first. But yeah, I mean, the Mongol Empire was the second biggest empire, and then the British Empire came in third. 35.5 million kilometers square is how much the British Empire is. I don't know how much a kilometer is because I still very much deal in miles. And so, but in England, despite going metric, this is an example of the crazy Englishness, right? Despite going metric, I reckon when was it, 1983 or something, or maybe 79, that the UK went metric and started using meters and centimeters and kilometers. It was too expensive to change all the road signs, so they never did. So the road signs are all in miles.
That's very funny.
It is
That's a
funny,
great
isn't it?
fact.
That's a great fact, yeah.
All right. Let's get you on to some the madness of American politics and the madness of the American cultural dialogue around politics and around leadership. Donald Trump coming off a victory in South Carolina in that primary, fully anticipated. I think the breaking news isn't that Trump was victorious. The breaking news might have been looking into how that voting went down. And then the other breaking news is that Haley has lost something which was a big lifeline for her, and we pointed to it on this show, and many pundits pointed to it, and that is a flow of money. Now, she still has a lot of money, but Nikki Haley lost that Koch brothers money. The Charles Koch revenue stream has been cut off now since South Carolina. So I wonder if you could speak to dissecting the vote and then what the future for Nikki Haley and Trump might be in your view.
Do they have the final numbers? I was looking at the exit poll numbers. It was like Trump with 51 to Haley's 47%. But I'm not sure where it ended up. I think she. I mean, at the end of the day, she wants to stay in till Super Tuesday, doesn't she? And she needs money to stay in. And the Koch brothers only want to back a winner. They don't want to back a loser. And that's how it goes often with these donors, right? They don't really care who the candidate is. They just want to back winners because that's how they've built their businesses. That's how they've made their money. And so, consequently, when it comes to their investments, they see political candidates as financial investments. Which horse to back? And unfortunately, despite the 2 impeachments, the paying off the porn star, the 91 charges, the 4 indictments, and now owing $450 million to the court.
Don't forget trying to overthrow the government.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that one. That's kind of a bit... That should have really gone first, shouldn't it? He is, in these regions, as popular as ever. But let's be clear about one thing. These areas, South Carolina especially, even though it is weighted, it is not. It's still a conservative place, right? But it's slightly more progressive than other districts. So Nikki Haley stood a good chance, and obviously she has form there. But ultimately, Donald Trump is. You cannot fight this giant. He is a giant. And the reason I know he is because he told us so. And this is the point that I want to make, is that Donald Trump is telling us that he's the most popular. Well, that's because, he skews the numbers. But you could argue that the leading candidate for the Republican Party should have done a lot better than Donald Trump just did in this primary.
Well,
It should be way ahead.
Yeah, isn't it that which, if you want to look at the numbers and begin to see what they might portend for the future,
Yes.
I think that's what you look at. So 6 in 10 men and women supported Trump over Haley. Over 9 in 10 in South Carolina, and this is the Republican Party, were white voters. About 6 in 10 of them supported Trump. Trump won a smaller majority of non-white Republican voters in the state of South Carolina. Most voters in South Carolina in the Republican Party do not have 4-year college degrees, and about 7 in 10 of them voted for Trump. Haley did better among Republicans with 4-year degrees, with support from just over half of them. Just looking at sort of some of these things. When you get down to ideology, this is again from exit polling, and Anthony mentioned the exit polling, and indeed this is sort of some of the stuff you find. 4 in 10 South Carolina Republicans voting in the primary considered themselves very conservative, and more than 8 in 10 of them supported Trump. Trump also won about 6 in 10 of voters who called themselves somewhat conservative, and Haley fared best among the roughly 1/4 of voters who called themselves moderate or liberal. About 7 in 10 of them voted for Haley. So, and then with evangelicals, as you know, 6 in 10 in the Republican primary in South Carolina were white evangelical Christians. According to exit polling, that's down slightly from 67% in the 2016 primary. About 7 in 10 white evangelicals voted for Trump. Smaller majority of other voters supported Haley. So he's got a lock on that white evangelical crew. He's got a lock on those who don't have college degrees. Not, and again, don't mean to overvalue college degrees, but just to say. And then when you get down to some of the issues that were covered in the exit polling, I thought it was interesting how they're clinging now to the big lie of the 2020. Do you think that Joe Biden legitimately won the presidency in 2020 was an exit poll question. 6 in 10 South Carolina GOP primary voters denied the legitimacy of Biden's 2020 presidential election. 6 in 10. Over 1/3 of Republican primary voters said that Biden was legitimately elected. Roughly 8 in 10 of them supported Nikki Haley. And then, of course, the question, if Donald Trump were to be convicted of a crime, would you consider him fit to be president? 6 in 10 in the South Carolina Republican primary would consider Trump fit to be president, even if he was convicted of a crime. So
but there's a reason for all of this, and that is because we are analyzing it as if he's a normal candidate. And this is where we are failing the electorate, because he is not a normal candidate. And it's a cult. Do you see what I mean? So all of these numbers, all of these questions are fine if you put them to normal voters and normal candidates. But the moment you put these types of questions, Mark, to cult members, of course it's going to be weighted. Especially that last question about if he was convicted of a crime. Because anybody with a moral compass would be like, no, of course not. I mean, look at the fuss that was made about Richard Nixon in the days before the cult had really kind of formulated. But now that there is a cult that cult members are in and they see him as the Messiah, you are never going to get the type of reaction from people that you would get in a normal election. This is not a normal election. This is a guy who tried to overturn the last one and will overturn or attempt to overturn this one too. Because he's going to lose, Mark. He's going to lose. And the reason it's a problem is because he is preparing his cult for the fact that he's going to win, and that if he loses, it's fraud. And we are going to be experiencing January 6th and everything that goes with that all over again.
I'd love to talk to you about this on an ongoing basis, the he's going to lose part of your statement. I'm, of course, convinced that he trails immensely in terms of a popular vote in this country. In other words, there's not support for Donald Trump by millions and millions and millions and millions of people. They don't want him anywhere near the White House, by the millions in this country. Sadly, our ridiculous system of voting allows for a president, first of all, allows, as we found, all of these things to exist at the presidential level from an ethical and from the standpoint of ethics and law that we, probably should open the hood on. But more to the point on electability and how the elections work. The elections come down to tens of thousands of people, as you know. I mean, literally, Biden won by, 44,000 maybe?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a sad fact that, I mean, we're talking about tens of, so if you move the meter just ever so slightly, Trump wins.
But this is actually what I was talking about on the program yesterday, on the weekend show yesterday, that one of your listeners, viewers, was mentioning, that the elephant in the room is the Electoral College that no one seems to be talking about. And it's like, you know, Trump is telling us that he's the most popular and he's the best and the biggest and he's going to win. And of course, he's going to win the primary. Of course he is. But on the national stage, he is unpopular. People know he's dangerous. People are starting to realize democracy is at stake, and they care more for democracy than they do for the orange guy. And so, but the system is rigged to favor Republicans. The Electoral College is a flawed system, and the reason they don't want to change it is because they know that if they went to a more proportional system of voting, that they would lose every time, as they have lost the popular vote every time. Has any Republican president won the popular vote? I think one, maybe. Briefly.
Yeah. Certain. I mean, I think Bush won the Bush, the younger one.
Younger Bush, George H.W.
Yeah. But the Electoral College, you're right, is not reflected popular. It doesn't reflect the people's voice. It just doesn't. Look, there's way more than that. I mean, there are people in this country who will never get a chance to vote in a way that will matter for senatorial representation, congressional representation. I'm talking about Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico, even our islands in the Pacific. I mean, those people are citizens. They should receive voting rights. They should have representation. They don't, for political reasons, naked political reasons.
Well,
and
it's racism. I mean, let's be clear what it is. It's, the Electoral College is a racist system. And that is why the Democrats have been challenging so many of these districts and these boundaries, is because it is a racist system. It's designed to favor the white candidates and the white voters. And, as we know, it goes back to the beginning of America's construction. So how do we right that wrong? Well, you could argue that the Democrats, whilst they had control, they could have done more and should have done more. I mean, I would have liked the filibuster to have been done away with. I would have liked the court to have been packed. I mean, and the Electoral College to have been overturned. But, they haven't really had the opportunity to do those things. And Joe Biden is a traditionalist. He believes that the system works, and he believes that bipartisan lawmaking is that we are capable of that. I don't personally believe we are. And so that's really where we're at. We're at a bit of an impasse, aren't we? Because we're just stuffed with the system that we have.
To actually change the electoral, you could do it, and there is an effort to do it through a sort of constitutional convention kind of portal.
Or the way we did it in the UK, where we tried to do it not that long ago, actually, about 12 years ago. They had a referendum, but they rigged the Conservatives rigged the question in the vote. It said, would you like to stick with the current first past the post system or change to the alternative vote? They didn't call proportional representation. They called it the alternative vote. And they said, do you want to stick with the first past the post? Well, first past the post sounds like best man wins, but it doesn't. It's basically the Electoral College system.
That's unreal. That is the power of manipulating the verbiage. Oh, my God.
And so the result was pathetic. I mean, a third of people in the everyone's complaining about the system. They give you a chance for a referenda, and then only a third of people vote for it.
Do you have it, Tony? A little bit of Geraldo. Geraldo was on. It's so weird. These people who are front runners for Donald Trump. Geraldo was on his Apprentice show. He's known him for years. I mean, Trump was a feature of New York society. I mean, by the way, always viewed as a grifter. I mean, really was. I mean, I know a lot of people in New York, and they always say, Trump is just, he's completely full of it, and he's full of the bluster. He was a P.T. Barnum figure.
Well, the best clip to play is one that I actually played on my show on Wednesday called Uncovered, which is a montage that my co-host Ron Filipkowski put together of all of the Trump TV commercials selling Trump products. And he montaged them together in 3.5 minutes. Everything, Trump ties, Trump steaks, Trump suits, Trump University. Montage them all. And do you know something? As amusing as it sounds, when you watch it, it makes it absolutely crystal clear that Donald Trump is just a failed business salesman.
Sure.
There's never been anything like this.
Yeah, right.
And
right.
by putting all of these together, you can see how many times he has tried and failed to get something off the ground that didn't work. The only thing that worked for him was The Apprentice, and it was because he wasn't in charge.
Right. Mark Burnett was just a brilliant.
I think I'm the most honest human being, perhaps, that God ever created.
I'd love to send that to me, and we'll run it here with full attribution.
I shall.
Run a little bit of a Geraldo, because it's just so interesting how he's on News Nation, I guess. He's one of their guys. Go ahead, just a little bit of this. This is their reaction to the South Carolina
Chris,
thing.
Is that Donald Trump has managed to convince a majority of the Republican Party and a very substantial majority of the Republican Party that the big lie is true, that he was somehow cheated out of the 2020 victory. It is amazing to me when I think back to Senator Tim Scott and Senator Lindsey Graham on the night of January 6th, 2021, as the Capitol was smoldering from the riots, condemning Donald Trump in no uncertain terms, and here they are kissing his behind. I think that it's pretty clear that Tim Scott is going to be his vice presidential pick, it seems to me. He's gone so far, so effusively. Nikki Haley, come to cherish her. I would vote for her if I could, if given the chance. She's fierce, she's sincere, she's a class act. I like the fact that her husband is serving in a very dangerous war zone in Africa. But in all things considered, I thought that she had to do 40% tonight to stay credible in this long shot candidacy. She's slightly under that. Does she have any chance really of sustaining, of winning? I doubt it. Makes it interesting, gives us something to talk about. But
okay,
I
now
like
he's
her a
just
lot. She's definitely
now he's
presidential
riffing.
timber.
But I think it's interesting. There are a couple of things that are interesting about that. Then I'd like to hear what your reaction is. But one of them is the way that we've normalized Nikki Haley as because she's up against Trump. She's gracious. Her husband is serving the country.
Yeah.
I think it is all about sort of her grace under fire. If you actually look at her policies, she's a hard right winger. She's happy with these Supreme Court appointments. I think it's full speed ahead on a right wing agenda with her. That's the Overton window. That's what is now tolerable from a politically. From what is tolerable culturally within the political mainstream. It changes because Trump is so out there that you just want somebody who resembles a duck that quacks like a normal duck.
Well, I have a bunch of bananas analogy. Do you want to hear it? Will you indulge me for a second?
Okay, go ahead.
So let's say you go shopping to the store and you get there and there's a bunch of bananas and they're a little bit mangy, right? They're not beautifully fresh, but they've still got a couple of days in them. So you only want one because you're a little peckish. So you pick off the best banana you can find and you're like, yes. You walk away and you're like, I got the best banana. And then someone else comes to the store because they only want one banana and they find the best of the bunch too. And they pick it off and they walk away just as happy as you because they got the best banana. And this is really what we're dealing with. These bananas are all spoilt. Right? All of these bananas are spoilt bananas, and yet we're having to do our best convincing ourselves that they are edible when actually they might be good enough for a smoothie. So
is that well, I mean, and there you go. And so let me ask you, is there something as we finish up in the South Carolina results, in the way these primaries have gone down in exit polling? Is there something here that would suggest that the Trump banana won't make it to the finish line? You've said and suggested that he won't.
Well, because as I said earlier, he didn't get as high a percentage of the vote as he should have done. If he's genuinely the clear winner, then he should have had 80% of the vote, and that didn't happen. But the more serious point here is that these are just Republican primaries. Then it's not a barometer for a general election. And so you're basically just asking Republicans to vote for Republicans. So a Republican's always going to win. So it's really, you know, we can analyze it, we can talk to death about it. But, you know, Trump is a cult leader and a clear winner, and he only needs enough of the vote to win in each of these primaries. He's going to, you know, even if he goes to jail, he's still going to be the candidate, right? Nothing is going to change. He can run for president from prison, oddly, and because it's a cult and not a normal situation, voters will go for that. Unfortunately, you know, we have this rigged system, this electoral college system that could win it for him, and he will then claim that it's because he is the most popular and because what he does is what people want and everything else. The reality is he is so far from what the American people need or want. So far. He is extreme. He has welcomed in extremist groups into his fold because he wanted the votes. So everybody was fair game, from Oath Keepers and Proud Boys and fine people on both sides. Bring them in. Let them, you know, why not?
Well, that was what his presidency was. You had visitors to the White House like, what's his name? The guy who, you know, denied that Sandy Hook happened. You know,
Alex Jones.
Alex Jones. Thank you. You had Diamond and Silk. You had, you know, every.
But these they are still fringe. You know, they are still fringe because the majority of hardworking Americans are not engaged in politics. They're not voting in primaries. They're not taking to social media. They're doing their jobs. They're getting on with their life, and they might wake up a little bit in the last 2 months of the election cycle and be like, okay, who am I going to vote for? And by then, by October time, there is going to be a real different landscape. You know, there will be more cases. There'll be more, you know, the Stormy Daniels case. Everything else is coming up. And there'll be a change in the Ukraine war. I think that there'll be a shift there. There'll be a shift in Gaza, I think, as well, which will change the national conversation and people's opinion of Joe Biden. The economy will by then have 2 solid years of growth, and which you cannot deny. And even on Fox, they're basically now saying, yep, okay, this is Joe Biden's, you know, Bidenomics. And so the landscape is going to look very different. So, yeah, we can get excited and distracted by primaries where, you know, which banana is going to win. But at the end of the day, you know, we shouldn't really be getting too excited until September, October time, when the political landscape in America will be completely different.
And, of course, add to this, and we'll talk maybe next week or soon, add to this the Democrats whose favorite pastime is really going after each other. And so there's this movement against Joe Biden, and it's a powerful one. And so I think that pushing back on that becomes something that the Biden people have to do.
They have a lot up their sleeve. They have an awful lot of very good electioneering up their sleeve in terms of social media and ads. Trump has given them so much material now to work with. Even the video of him taking ownership of the reversal of Roe versus Wade. You know, I did that. Women should be punished. All that stuff. Those are the videos that are going to be played. You know, this election, a little bit like the midterms and certainly 2020, comes down to Dobbs. This is another Dobbs election.
Yeah, I mean, it may indeed be, because I think that narrative, other narratives are allowed to float out there, and they've kind of settled in by now. Republicans are better on business, Trump's better on business, blah, blah, blah. When, as you say, the reality is just the contrary. You know, the 5-minute news, get it. It's now a video. You can see Anthony Davis. My God, he also does the weekend show, and he does other shows. He does the
Uncovered on a Wednesday.
Uncovered, I love that show. Yeah. And you can see him here whenever we can grab him. We do. Maybe we'll grab you again next week. I love talking to you, Anthony Davis. Thank you.
Likewise. I've sent you that montage of Trump selling his products. I really think you should play it, because not only will you get at least an hour's worth of comedy material out of it, but it goes a long way to show who he really is. He is just one of those kind of TV advertorial people, you know, who owns a business, and like Victor Khayyam and the Remington Microshave.
Sure. He's Ron Popeil. He's, what's his name? Mike Lindell.
Don't talk to me that way.
So we will run it. I'd actually run it now, but we just don't have time. But
anytime.
We will get to it.
That was very inappropriate.
All right. My favorite Britisher, we love him whenever he can make it through, Anthony Davis. Thank you, sir, for your takes. And we'll talk to you soon. Anthony Davis, everybody. All hail the motherland. The colonies have never been the same since you guys left. I love it. Bravo, 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 bravo. Gosh, everything just sounds so much better coming out of his mouth.
The Mark Thompson Show.
You know what I mean? Just everything. Those Brits, they speak with the King's English. You know what I'm talking about, Courtney, don't you? Yeah. Courtney is standing by with another segment that'll get us demonetized. I'm looking very much forward to.
Yeah, that's my weekly contribution.
Yeah,
so.
that's good. Did you have a good weekend, Courtney?
I did.
Did you?
Did you, Mark?
I don't know. I literally don't even remember what we did this weekend. What was it? Well, did we do anything together that was fun? Did we? We went to a great dinner. I remember that.
I'm so happy these moments that we spend together are so touching for you.
Yeah.
And have such a great impact for you. Yeah, we went to dinner on Friday.
Uh-huh.
And then on Saturday, I was at a gallery. And then Saturday night, we went to dinner. And then Sunday, you had like a really cool birthday party.
Oh, that was good. In fact, I got some people who are going to come on the show from that party. Wow,
so,
it was a political man. Yeah, that was really good.
Exactly. And then
thank you. Well, this is why Courtney's so great. She can remind me of what I've done over the weekend.
I mean, it's what every woman hopes for.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Courtney, stand by in the green room and Kim's news, and then we'll get some True Crime Corner. Did you have anything, Kim, before I continue?
No. Carry on, please.
Kim, how are you?
Okay. Tony, we're okay?
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah. Oh, everything's cool. What? I don't know. Everything's fine.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Taking the temperature of the room, you know?
Always checking in where I can, man.
Oh, yeah. On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Matter of fact, I've got a cup full of Moroccan mint as we speak.
She's rocking the Moroccan,
That's
Courtney.
right.
I've got some right here myself. I've got my, I've got 6 shots of espresso.
Oh, that's right.
My God.
So we're just starting.
Lights me up. I love
Bring it on.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what's happening with social media companies and their control over online content. It is the focus of a landmark U.S. Supreme Court hearing today. The court is examining Republican-backed laws in Texas and Florida that were put in place over claims TikTok, Facebook, pictured here, YouTube, and others dislike conservative speech. The companies argue any such restrictions violate their First Amendment right to free speech.
This is exactly right. This is a case brought by conservative media, saying that they're...
You can't limit us.
Yeah, saying that they're getting downgraded in the algorithm. That's what they're essentially saying, regardless of where the algorithm is, whether it's Facebook or whatever.
One of the interesting arguments we were talking about earlier was that the lawyers apparently are comparing social media to telegraph services, right? Still private companies.
They want it to be considered a utility. That's because if it's a utility, then it can be regulated. That's the thinking.
Let's go to him, former President Trump, appealing his $454 million civil fraud judgment in New York. Trump's legal team filed a notice of appeal today, citing judicial errors. The appeal challenges the finding that Trump lied about his wealth to benefit his real estate holdings. Means he's got to put a lot of money up, though.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he has to put the money up no matter what.
I did everything right, and they indicted me.
Yeah. He has to put up. We've had, many conversations. You can find the shorts on this. About $370 million.
Ouch. I mean, I don't know. Does that?
So you have to bond that out or find a bank to loan it to you during the time that you're appealing. And by the way, while you're appealing, there is an interest on that penalty. So I think the interest is $111,000 a day. That's my recollection anyway.
So the beautiful part about this is if he loses the appeal, does that money go straight to, to where it needs to go to? Or does he get it back and then have to pay it? Because getting that money out of him might have been difficult. But if he has to put it in an account controlled by the court,
Oh yeah, I mean he has to put the money up to the court. Exactly, that's what has to happen. It's I was right. $111,400 a day. Thank you, Brian. Yeah.
Mr. Navalny. It turns out that associates of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny say there were talks underway right before his death to exchange him for a Russian imprisoned in Germany. There was a prisoner swap in the works. The talks said to be in the final stages the day before Navalny was reported dead.
I don't know if I believe that.
That's what the associates of Navalny are saying.
No.
California Governor Gavin Newsom facing another recall attempt. Conservative activists with the group Rescue California are serving Newsom's office with official recall papers today. Proponents of the recall claim the governor is spending too much time in the national political sphere rather than focusing on the issues facing California and its voters.
Wow.
They insist that Newsom has abandoned the state as it grapples with an estimated $73 billion budget shortfall. The group needs 1.3 million verified signatures by May in order to qualify for the November ballot. Of course, we know in 2021, Governor Newsom beat a recall that was organized by some of the same people from Rescue California. So far, no comment from Newsom's office. How much money are we going to spend? Why?
Total waste of time. Don't understand it. But, I mean, it's what they do. It's kind of all they do.
I guess if they feel they got to go for it, they got to go for it.
Yeah.
The Federal Trade Commission suing to block the merger of grocery chains Kroger and Albertsons. The FTC alleging this deal, which would be the largest supermarket merger in U.S. history, would create higher prices for consumers. The deal was first announced in 2022, looked to combine the 5th and 10th largest retailers in the country.
They're right. The FTC is right. I railed about this on our show before. Yeah. These mergers crush the consumer. Of course, prices are going to go up. Why? Because there's no more competition. Yeah. This country has allowed all of these mergers and acquisitions to go unabated, and you end up with the consumer getting screwed. And that's exactly what's going to happen with this merger.
Workers are saying, listen, it's going to make it harder for us to negotiate deals. There's not going to be as,
And workers are right when they say that. The same thing has happened in media, as you well know. I mean, my God. Hey, if you lost your job at KNBR, let's say, which is a radio station in San Francisco, a big sports station, that person loses their job at KNBR. They can go across the street to one of the other stations. What is it? What's one of the Cumulus stations? They own it, like the KGO, the Spread, or whatever they call it. You can't. They're all owned by one entity, right? Same is true in television. I mean, there are just so few opportunities. So I guess what I'm trying to say is your right to work is affected, your quality of product is affected, and the consumer is ultimately screwed because the price for that product only rises. There's no competition. You find it across the board in media, in telecom companies. It's a sad fact that this. I love that the FTC has clapped back on this deal. I don't know if it'll go through, but I love that they're trying to intercede.
Lastly, so we can get to Courtney's True Crime Corner, let me tell you about this story.
I'm sorry, Courtney, for that rant.
It's a little lottery story, because I love a little lottery story, right?
Yes.
This Michigan man won $100 from a scratch-off lottery ticket, and he decided to let it ride. That's right, let it ride. So he took that $100 and he bought more tickets. And then he won $1 million. Wow.
Wow.
59-year-old Oakland County man telling Michigan lottery officials he visited the Meyer store on Haggerty Road in Commerce Township to buy some tickets. He said, I bought 4 tickets. I won $100. So I used the winnings to purchase more tickets, including this $1 million cash multiplier ticket featured here on the Mark Thompson Show.
I've never seen nothing like that in Golden Corral before.
Yeah, that's unreal.
He said he scratched off the barcode first, scanned it with the Michigan Lottery app. When confetti came up on the screen with a prize of $1 million, he thought the scanner was broken. I scratched off the full ticket, and that's when I saw I really did win. It was awesome, he said.
Good morning.
Yeah.
He plans to use some of his retirement money. Get it? In Michigan, some of it is okay. In California, it wouldn't even be a drop in the bucket. He said he plans to use some of his prize money to buy a retirement home with a pool.
Yeah, right.
It's fantastic.
You could, right. You could, and it would be harder in California. You could do it maybe, but I need to take you out to some places
Like
you've
what?
never been before.
In Modesto, maybe. I don't know.
Exactly, right.
Apologies
That's
to
wild,
folks
though.
in Modesto.
Congratulations to him.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's great.
It was great. I loved it.
I think that's just awesome.
I'm telling you, if you were going to spend $100 in the first place, then you had $100 to lose, right? So why not let it ride? I'm just saying.
Kim's become quite the gambler since she started this show.
Oh, I did go to a casino on Friday night, and I sent you a video.
I know.
Wow.
That's great. I thought it was like something that she sent after she had a couple of Mai Tais.
Yeah.
She's sitting at the machine.
Were you playing?
I have my friend's mom is 85, and she's legally blind. She can't hear, but she loves to go to the casino and play the slot machine. So occasionally my friend will take her mom up there and, whatever. So she asked if I wanted to go, and I went with them. And so I was sitting at the machine next to her, and I was playing a little bit here and there. And, usually you don't, if you're doing the spin the big wheel, the wheel, a fortune thing, they never let you spin the wheel. I got to spin the wheel 6 times.
Wow.
And I kept filming it.
Oh,
I only
wow.
sent you one of the big wheel videos, but yeah, I didn't win anything. It was like playing for pennies, but still, it's still fun.
No, I love it.
There's a reason that this place is fun.
Right. Does I like that her mother's legally blind and can't hear.
Yeah.
And the
I
casino.
feel like that's the best way to experience.
I'm
You have to
feeling
sit
as though
next to her and go, you didn't win. Push it again.
the
You didn't
casino's
win.
favorite client. Yeah.
You won. You won. How much did I win? 5 cents. Push it again.
Push it again.
This report is sponsored by
Yeah.
CoachellaValleyCoffee.com.
Yeah, baby.
Such
Love
good
my
coffee.
Coachella.
Such good tea.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Courtney, while you're here, you guys can vibe about the tea for
Oh
30
my
seconds,
God,
and we got to
the
get going.
tea.
Moroccan
Yeah.
mint. I like the Moroccan mint. I
Have
like
you
the
had-
vanilla.
Oh, have you had the mint with the date, the crystallized date?
I haven't
So
yet,
good.
no.
Oh
Oh,
my
it's
God.
so
It's like
good.
just the right amount of sweet with the
Sounds
mint. Yeah. And then
So good.
we share an Earl Grey or a English breakfast like
We
every
do.
day.
We have
Yeah.
a romantic.
That is
Earl Grey
romantic.
And
share.
Mark, that's the only thing he ever remembers, apparently.
It's true.
Because they're a sponsor.
Yeah. That's
These
right. I remember the
moments,
sponsors.
these tender
Remember the
moments
sponsors?
involving Coachella
Patreon
Valley
and
Coffee.
PayPal
Moments,
members,
yeah.
super sticker people
Yep.
I remember, and the super chat people I remember. That's it.
Yep.
Courtney,
That's it.
sometimes I get, but
I
sometimes
know.
not.
It really
went
benefit
to-
me to watch the show.
Yeah.
We went to dinner somewhere at some point. I don't know.
Yeah.
CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. You can get 10% off. Don't forget, when you go to the website, as you exit with your cart, to put in Mark T at checkout to get your exclusive and official Mark Thompson 10% off. Mark
Mint
T
with date
at
crystals is
checkout.
being shown on screen, and as
Yeah.
Kim says, yeah, Mark T
highly
at checkout for
recommend
10% off.
Yeah, it's great. It's a new flavor we
$11.50.
got.
I find the tea lasts does a bag of tea last about a month for you?
No, we use different bags, so it's very, very hard to say how
Yeah, it
long
lasts
it
a while.
lasts.
It's a lot
I love
cheaper
the
than going
coffee
out to
too
get
that
it.
I'm mixing. Excuse me, pardon me.
Yeah.
Please, go ahead. Do what you must.
That's
Exactly.
delicious. It's
I'm Kim
delicioso.
McAllister. It is
Yes.
The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
You want to just get right to her, because I feel like now we're way behind. That's why I just want to get. Don't you think, Tony? We should get right to.
Thanks, Tony.
Okay, Tony.
Let's pay a visit to Mark's True Crime Corner.
This is not a good neighborhood. I'm scared.
Now, here's your host, Mark Thompson.
True crime has gripped this country like a herpes virus. I mean, it is really, you can't get rid of it.
Oh, thanks for that introduction.
Wow.
Wow.
Well, I mean, just saying, what I'm trying to say is that
I've left a good impression with you.
I don't get it myself. I really don't. But I appreciate that many appreciate it. You know?
Yes.
So I appreciate the appreciation.
Well, to that point, the two cases that I'm going to cover are both in the top 10 movies for Max and Netflix for the past 2 or 3 weeks.
Wow.
So, yeah, the longevity of that popularity is pretty remarkable.
I like that and this is something that Courtney does really quite, I think she overthinks it. but she works so hard to find cases that have relevance in today's zeitgeist, in today's sort of cultural milieu, which would be it. And so with that said, tell us about what you have today.
Yes. So I'm going to cover two cases briefly because the first case I was going to cover, and the only case was the truth about Jim, because it takes place in Santa Rosa.
Oh, cool.
And so particularly relevant for a large part of your listeners.
Yeah,
and,
North Bay.
But
what is this lover, stalker,
this
killer that I'm
lover,
saying?
stalker, killer. This film came out, it's a documentary. It came out on February 9th. It's still in the top 10 on Netflix. And this is a story about a man named Dave Krupa, who, this is Dave. This is a screen grab from the documentary. So this is what he looks like now. But if you go to the next visual, if you're following along visually. So Dave Krupa was a mechanic, and he met his wife, Amy Flora, while working at a garage. They married and had kids, but they were very young. They were in their mid to late 20s. And so by the time he was 35, Dave Krupa had divorced. And Amy Flora, his wife, took the kids and moved home to Iowa, and he followed them. And so he's single for the first time in his, sort of somewhat matured adult life. And so he is exploring dating, and he goes on some dating apps, very particularly Plenty of Fish.
I see.
And so he's on Plenty of Fish, and he really is just looking to kind of like casually date women. He's not into anything serious.
No.
He meets a woman, if you go to the next visual, and her name is Liz. And Liz Gollier is a single woman. She is an entrepreneur. She owns her own business. Liz is cleaning, and she really loves selfies. And she takes like hundreds of selfies a week. And so these are a couple of Liz's selfies. But Liz is really, really fond of Dave. They date for a little while. And this is a picture of the couple in better times. And so they're dating. And then one day, a beautiful woman walks into the garage that Dave works at, and he's taken with her. And her name is Carrie Farver.
Oh.
And Carrie, at the time, he describes her as being blonde. But if you go to the next visual.
So this, because Krupa and Liz we're seeing there. Okay, this is Carrie.
Yeah, this is Carrie, yeah. So he's dating Liz Gollier, but
who we just saw.
Who we just saw, but he meets Carrie.
Carrie, who's there on the left. Now that's her husband?
That's her son, Max.
Her son, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So he meets Carrie. She comes into the garage. She has an issue with her Ford Explorer, and so he's working on that for her, and he asks her out. They go to Applebee's. Where all great love stories originate.
You know what? Good for him.
They have a great time. I've heard two different versions of this story.
Thompson, party of four.
Yes, we're going to go to Applebee's. We're working toward Applebee's, actually.
Exactly, yeah. Because everywhere we go leaves such a remarkable impression on Mark. And so he is dating Carrie, and he has Carrie at his house, and there's an incident where Liz, the selfie woman, encounters Carrie leaving his house as Liz is coming to Dave's house unannounced to pick up some of her stuff. And so Liz and Carrie give each other the side eye, and then they leave.
Now, Carrie at that point was still seeing him, right?
Yeah.
She was, when you say picking up some of her stuff, she was just coming by the house to get something. Okay.
Yeah. So all casual, the three of them all casual, but they didn't really know about each other until this moment where they pass one another.
Okay.
And so Carrie continues to see him. She's actually staying with him quite a bit because she works really close by. So she's there pretty frequently during the week.
That's Carrie again on the left that we're seeing. Okay. Good.
She leaves for work one day, and Dave goes to work. And then, like a couple hours later, Dave gets like 50 text messages from Carrie. I want to move in with you. We need to move in. And he writes back and says, this is casual. I'm not ready for that. And then she proceeds to write like all these text messages with profanity and telling him he's ruined her life and really spiraling in the span of just like a couple hours. And so he's very confused by this behavior. And so then Carrie writes and says, I'm leaving you. I'm moving to Kansas. You're never going to hear from me again. And a couple days goes by and he doesn't hear from Carrie. And then he doesn't stop hearing from Carrie. There was actually, I think in the span of 3 years, like 150,000 messages.
Wow.
Yeah, it was quite crazy. She was texting, she was emailing.
This woman on the left,
this woman, Carrie. If you go to the next slide, I want to walk through some of the visuals. Yep. So here are some of the examples. So Carrie's reaching out to Dave. She's saying, I hate you. You ruined my life. Carrie's reaching out to Liz Golyar, the selfie woman.
Oh, yeah.
Saying, stop dating
the
Dave.
other girlfriend, yeah.
Yeah, you're horrible. I hate you.
Saying stop dating him.
Yeah, stop
Right.
dating Dave.
Right.
Carrie's talking to her mom and her son, Max, but she won't get on a phone call, and she's telling him that she's not coming home and she's moved away. She misses her dad's funeral. And that's a really big red flag for Carrie's mom, because Carrie's dad had been sick and died, and she had not come home for that.
So all of a sudden, it looks like something weird's going on.
Yeah. And then it escalates. So then Carrie burns down Liz Golyar's house.
Wow.
Yes.
This is of someone who had exhibited none of that behavior prior to this.
Yep. And I'm going to tell you this, even though I don't want to, but I think it's important to the story. Liz had 2 kids. They were not in the home, but all of Liz's pets were in the home, and they all died.
Oh, that's
They
so
all
sad.
perished in the fire.
Oh.
And
now I care.
Right. And so, and then Amy Flora, who I talked about earlier, she's getting threats. Dave's kids are getting threats. And then one day, Liz is shot in a park. There's a gunshot that grazes her leg in a park. This Liz here. And she's blaming it on Amy Flora, who's the wife. Like, she's sort of blaming the stuff that's happened to her, and it seems like it's happening to her from Carrie and now potentially from Amy.
So to just review what's happened, blizzard of these text messages, stay away from, Carrie says, stay away from Liz. Then Liz's home is actually burned down,
and
then
shot.
Liz is actually shot in a park. I mean, the bullet only grazing her, but this is, and then Carrie at the same time, in addition to this, has said she's moved away and she's missed now her father's funeral. Okay, I'm clear on it. Okay, go ahead.
So there's like these 3 women and Dave. And so Carrie's mom at some point after the missed funeral reports Carrie as missing. And so now the police are involved. So if you go down on the visuals, and so they bring in
no one's seen Carrie, so it's a weird thing.
Carrie.
It's coming from her phone and all, but maybe somebody's... Okay, go ahead.
And there's all these things happening, and and it's happening to Liz. Like, Liz is a central focus of this, and Liz is sort of saying, like, it's definitely Carrie, but then when she gets shot, she thinks it's Amy Flora.
Tangled double love triangle of Shanna, Liz, Golyar is what we're seeing on screen now on the corkboard.
So what happens is they bring in a forensic, basically tech lead from the police station, and he looks at hundreds of thousands of pings over the course of several years that have been sent by Carrie.
From the cell phone.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And he decides he's going to have to write a program to figure out all the IP addresses. So he writes a program, and he's able to find the top 10 IP addresses that certain messages were sent from, and then he distills that down to one guy's house. And if you go up, his name is Todd Butterbaugh. This gentleman here. And you won't believe it, but Todd, he works for that forensic tech lead.
Wow.
He works under him at the police department. And he says, listen, it wasn't me, but I have this on and off girlfriend named Liz Golyar.
Oh my God.
And after her house burned, she came to live with me. Wow. And it turns out it has been Liz Golyar this whole time.
All along, sending all of those text messages.
Sending all of the text messages. She was sending all of the emails. She was stalking Dave. She was stalking Amy. She was stalking the kids. She shot herself in the park.
She burned her own house down.
She burned her own house down. And once they realize that it's Liz, they really now need evidence to prove that it's Liz because they don't have a body.
Well, wait a minute. But what's implied here, what you're saying, they don't have a body, is that she killed the other woman.
Yeah, it's implied
Carrie.
that she killed Carrie, but they
And
don't
she-
have a body, so they don't know that Carrie's dead.
She killed Carrie and has her cell phone, and from her cell phone, all those messages came. So how do they go about trying to find a body? Or what happens? They take her into questioning, or...
Yeah, well, it's really interesting. This is months and months and months of strategy with Liz, but they basically tell Liz is now kind of bringing Amy into this, as I mentioned, and sort of distributing the blame between Carrie and Amy. And so she says, oh, I think Amy killed Carrie, because they're saying, like, we don't think Carrie's alive anymore. And they say to her, well, if you could get the real story out of if we could get the real story out of Amy, then we can arrest her for Carrie's murder. So Liz goes home and writes out the murder of Carrie Farver as pretending it's from Amy, the wife. And that's where they go to the car, and that's where they find the blood. And then they end up finding photographs on an old cell phone SIM card that was Liz, that has a picture of the body of Carrie. And so ultimately they have enough evidence to find Liz guilty.
That's her car.
That's Carrie's car.
And she was shot in that car. It looks like.
She was stabbed in that car.
Stabbed.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So
yes.
She was. Did they piece together exactly what happened, when it happened, and how it happened?
Yeah, because Carrie wrote her own admittance. Because
okay, what did she say there?
She said basically that she lured Carrie out to her car, she stabbed her in the car, killed her, and then she burned the body. And so that's what she said in the emails, pretending that they were from Amy Flora.
Wow.
Yeah. And it turns out that Liz's son, which is where you see sort of that triangle and where you saw an earlier picture of Cody, he was an infant named Cody, and he was shaken to death, and she was the prime suspect. So in fact, there had been a murder earlier in her life, and it was unfortunately her little boy. And then, as I mentioned earlier, she burned down her house knowing that her pets were inside. I mean, really, really just awful, awful maniacal stuff.
Wow.
It's awful, yeah. So this is actually on Netflix right now. You can stream it now on Netflix. And the next story quickly is Jim Mordecai, the truth about
okay.
Jim.
It's just wild, by the way, the trouble, it's interesting, the human psyche. I don't mean to be I'm not trying to, it sounds like I'm going to get deep. I'm not. Just that it's weird how somebody gets so jacked up on somebody else that they're ready to kill and, do all this other crap to stay with them. It's absurd. I mean, it's just so, they hijack their own lives to stay in the thrall of whomever.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely.
I mean, look at this Liz Goliar. I mean, she's traded in her whole life, and she gets it's one lie on another, and but it is a certain disconnect. I'm asking you this as a true crime analyst. Mm-hmm. There is a disconnect, right? I mean, this is a deep psychological issue these people have.
Yes, definitely. Well, absolutely. I mean,
it's more than the depravity of killing somebody. It's going through all the rest of this stuff. It's wrapped up in romance, or romance is the wrong word. I mean, lust or love or something.
Yeah, it's a deep mental illness and sickness that's driving you to torture the lives of many people after you've killed their loved one.
Yeah, exactly.
And then do horrific crimes that, in fact, kill or harm other creatures and people. And it's a real sickness. It's really scary. And it goes on for years. I mean, I think it's from like 2012 to 2015. Imagine 3 or 4 years of your life where you're being stalked by somebody and they're threatening your life and the lives of your kids and the lives of the people that you love. And you think it's somebody else that whole time.
Wow.
And then you suddenly find out it's the person who you've been trusting. It's the person who, the other thing too, beyond the fact that she's many things, including a narcissist, she made herself the center of all of the attacks, right? So a lot of the attacks were on Liz, keying her car, burning her house down. So there was this inordinate amount of anger toward Liz for someone that Carrie allegedly, had only passed once in her life in like a brief moment. And so I think that also tipped the law enforcement off that there was something of imbalance there.
All right. What is the second one then? I'm sorry
The
again.
second one is the truth about Jim. And so Jim Mordecai he's a teacher at Half Moon Bay High School.
Yeah, this is a guy. This is the Santa Rosa thing.
And
Half Moon Bay is south of San Francisco. Santa Rosa is north of San Francisco. Just to give people the kind of general geography. Go ahead.
And so he lives there. He has a couple ex-wives. And his most recent wife, I think it was his third marriage, her kids went to the school that he taught at. And he taught various classes, but he was somewhat known for Future Farmers of America. And so he was a teacher in that space. But he was known for doing pretty terrible things to the kids. Now, it was all alleged that he was having relationships with the students. One of your listeners wrote in and told me about some incidents that she had heard about at school, and she was actually a student of Jim at Half Moon Bay. But this whole series, it's a 4-part series. It's on Max right now. It's streaming on Max. Is done by his step-granddaughter, and her name is Sierra Gorder. And Sierra is convinced that Jim Mordecai is the Santa Rosa hitchhiker murderer. And she comes with all this different evidence to the case to the fact that Jim is the Santa Rosa hitchhiker murderer. And that is 6 murders that happened between 1972 and 1973 to young women between the ages of 12 and 24. And Jim notoriously went after young girls, 12, 13, 14, 15. And beyond that, they have physical evidence. They have testimony and different evidence from people who, in fact, maybe saw the Santa Rosa hitchhiker murderer or saw him in passing. And so they collect all of this evidence, and they are looking to determine if he is, in fact, this person, the suspect.
No, but can you just tell me suspect of what these
Santa
murders?
Rosa hitchhiker murders.
I get, but were there, how many murders were there?
There were 6.
Okay, I'm sorry.
6 young girls, between the ages of 12 and 24.
You did, yeah, there you go. I'm sorry.
And in fact, those all took place in Santa Rosa, and there is even further evidence that he might have been the Zodiac killer. Now, I think an expert in the Zodiac killer somewhat debunks that during the series, but they do have DNA from Jim, from his family, and they do have DNA from one of the murders. So right now, the police in Santa Rosa have Jim's DNA, and they have the DNA from the murder. So we shall see if they match it. But there is no news on whether or not they're pursuing that.
And again, the person who brought this forward is the daughter of this guy who
granddaughter.
Okay, granddaughter. Okay,
Step granddaughter.
Step granddaughter. I'm only auditing the class, so I only get I kind of get the general idea of what you're saying.
Now you see why he doesn't remember what we did all weekend. He's not even present when I'm doing the story, and I'm talking about murder. Like, it couldn't be more.
That's exactly
why
I can't follow it, because it's like.
But you're right in the sense of it's the step granddaughter, it's the stepdaughter, and it's the ex-wife. Jim died of cancer, I think, in the early 2000s. So he's been gone for a little while. But as they were moving him out of the house, they found like girls' bows, and girls' earrings, and things that didn't belong to anybody in the house. And as I mentioned, is that further physical evidence that he might, in fact, have been the Santa Rosa hitchhiker murderer.
Wow. So this, again, it's on Max.
This is on Max.
The Truth About Jim.
The Truth About Jim.
And you liked it. And you liked both these series, and that you just recounted to us. You liked the Netflix as well. But
Yes, I like the Netflix as well. I watched the Netflix twice, and then I watched The Truth About Jim. So,
geez, Lover, Stalker, Killer is a Netflix.
So this came out on February 9th. As you would before Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
And then the other one came out on February 15th, which I thought were sort of funny dates to release these. But they know their audience. So, yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's true. Half Moon Bay and Santa Rosa are pretty far apart. That's true. But they believe he
had a cabin up closer to Santa Rosa. That was a family cabin. And so he would go there and he would spend time there. Now, that's also where he took some of the students where he sexually assaulted them. So that is why he was in and around Santa Rosa. He also grew up around there. And at the time that these murders happened, there was obviously no GPS. So you really had to know the back roads of that city to be able to navigate them. And the interesting part was a lot of the bodies from the Santa Rosa hitchhiker murders were in relatively the same area. So you'd have to know the area to be able to go back to those places to dump the bodies.
My friend had him as a teacher, says Ms. Organic. Wow.
Yeah.
And Janet says, I had him as a teacher too.
Yeah.
Janet had him as a teacher. Wow, this guy was...
He was very abusive to the stepchildren that lived with him. He was very creepy. There are parts of this that I haven't gone into detail just for timing, but he did, in fact, sexually assault one of his stepdaughters. He was a very, very awful human being, and perpetrated crimes on really these captive kids that were, in his class and in his school.
BW asks, did they do any forensics, or is this just a bunch of hyperbole? No one can just ask, did they do any forensics and leave it at that? They would go, or is this a bunch of hyperbole?
Well, I mean, they do have the DNA.
Yeah, the DNA.
Yeah,
she just mentioned the DNA.
But I mean,
but it's true. I mean, it could be.
I think the Zodiac Killer was maybe to stretch
a little hyperbolic.
A third part of the series.
Yeah, that might be with the hyperbole.
3 or 4 of the segments. But
we need one more episode. Is there anything else you could tie this guy to?
What else happened in the 70s in Northern California we could tie him to? It's funny. They start out the whole series by identifying, they say Northern California as being the sort of world center of serial killers in the 70s. And so, it was rich with opportunity to connect him or attach him to things. But
wow.
He was not a good guy. So if you're interested in this, it is on Max. And then, as I mentioned, the others on Netflix
as well.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Courtney, so impressive today with 2 offerings that are in the zeitgeist already and available to be plunged in some kind of deep dive of true crime, both on Netflix and on Max. And you've given us the route to follow up. It's very exciting. I myself, with not even marginal interest in this crap, may actually get into it because you've spun a web of intrigue with me.
Well,
so
I mean, if you have an extra 6 hours, you can watch them both.
When you say I've watched these twice, I'm going, where do you find the time?
I know. Well, that's what happens when your partner plays a lot of poker. You got a lot of time by yourself.
What?
That's Mark's True Crime Corner for today.
True Crime Corner, only on the Mark Thompson Show.
Courtney, everybody. How about it for Courtney? Nice job, Courtney.
Oh, thank you.
Walter says Courtney is always impressive. She is always impressive. Insanely well prepared. Thank you.
Thank you.
Getting
a
lot
Walter.
of thanks.
Thank you. That means a lot.
Yes, thanks a lot, Courtney.
Thank
says
you. Thank
Corinna.
you. Well, I appreciate
everybody very
being
grateful
here.
to you, which is very, very nice. You do, in my view, you over prepare. I've never seen anyone immerse themselves in subject matter the way you do for this show. So thank you. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. I feel a responsibility for the victims and their families.
Oh, that's sweet. That's sweet. Yeah. Oh, very, very nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, 4 thank yous. That's our top thank you on this show. The 4 thank yous.
Thank you.
No reason to belabor it, but that was the very good.
Thank you.
All right, we get the idea. All right. Courtney, everybody, thank you very much, Courtney.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Well, we have other stuff to do. We really do. First of all, I want to thank everybody who has shown up today and been part of this. We are tending the garden of a homegrown show. So we need you and your support. Thank you. We're a crowd-funded show, as you know. So occasionally I've got to do a PBS pledge drive here saying if you haven't, please do explore the ways to support the show, Patreon and PayPal. Try to give you a breadth of things on this show so we don't just hammer politics all the time. You can find us at themarkthompsonshow.com. Click the Patreon or PayPal links. It'll take you through to both Patreon or PayPal. And you can contribute for the price, as I say, of a Starbucks coffee or tea. weekly, you can throw us $20 a month and you help keep us on the air, frankly. I mean, we're really, and I tell Kim this all the time, if it weren't for your generosity, we literally just wouldn't be here. I mean, just can't do the show without you guys. So thank you so much. That's why we post everybody's name who's Patreon or PayPal. That community of supporters, they are acknowledged every single day at the end of this show. And Tony updates that list. What is it? Once a month you do, Tony?
Yes, once a month.
Once a month.
Thanks,
so
Tony.
If you're waiting to see your name there, it's so funny. Some people are waiting to see their name, and some people go, I don't want my name on the list, or don't acknowledge me, but here you go. And they're oftentimes very big, generous donors who say that. But in any case, my point is that we very much, and I never lose sight of it. As I say, I talk to Kim about it all the time. Never lose sight of how important you are and how supportive you are. So thank you. Patreon or PayPal. So smash the like button.
Smash it with your
free.
iron rod.
Just give us a thumbs up. That's free. So, all right. Much to do. There's a bizarre case.
The Mark Thompson Show.
There's a bizarre case in Law and Disorder involving this deep fake at a school in Beverly Hills. It's not even a first of its kind, actually. These stories more and more where they take a student's likeness and they weave it into some awful porn scene or whatever. That's something that's being done with decibel, I think, is the big thing. You end up with did I mute myself or something?
No, I did
Tom?
it. I tried to mute myself to cough, and instead of muting me, I muted you because I'm a bonehead.
Okay, I didn't know what you've heard or what you didn't hear. But anyway, we're gonna get into the story that is taking place. This controversy at a high school, but it's not a one-off. It's not the first of its kind. We will also get into a couple of other things. The NRA, as you know, Wayne LaPierre has just had a major judgment slapped onto him, which is just an interesting reflection of how utterly without morality and ethics they are, even as they eat their own with the NRA. And more. I have all of that in Law and Disorder. It's pretty crazy. And I do have, because that might be a little heavy for you, and I promise you, I don't know if I should tip this or not. In fact, I will lead Law and Disorder after Kim's news. Do I have time for this? Yeah, I do. I will lead Law and Disorder with something that took place. Someone is arrested, okay, who is a professional competitor in this sport. I don't want you to Google it, so I'm going to just stay with me, and I will tell you. And they arrest him in the middle of the tournament as he's competing. Handcuffs and everything. It's pretty delicious, especially what he was accused of. So we will get to that. Again, smash the like button like a boss.
Smash it with your iron rod.
After Kim's news, I'll give you some Law and Disorder, and then Karen Dawn is here with a word about animals. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report sponsored by Tenuta Vineyards in Livermore. Let's go to the Capitol, where lawmakers are returning this week with just a handful of days left now to strike a deal to fund the government. Parts of the government will shut down Friday night if Congress fails to act, with a full shutdown possible by March 8th. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer Sunday saying leaders had not yet reached a compromise on spending bills, blaming House Republicans for this delay. Speaker Mike Johnson, meanwhile, blamed Democrats for the making of the last-minute demands and are holding up negotiations as well. So doesn't look like we're going to get to a deal, but we'll see how it goes. Hunter Biden will testify behind closed doors on Wednesday. This in the Republican-led Let's see if I have a Hunter Biden picture. There you go. In the Republican-led impeachment inquiry of his father, President Biden. Republicans seeking to impeach the president are trying to find hard evidence that he used his time as vice president to benefit his family financially. But the inquiry suffered a major setback after the recent indictment of a former FBI informant. The Justice Department indicted Alexander Smirnov on allegations he made up information. So they might not have a lot to go on here. Thank you to KCAL News for this picture, because it really shows what's happening in Brentwood, a neighborhood near Los Angeles. Now, a hillside here showing signs it might soon give way. You can see below these big mansions the cracks in the hill. It doesn't look good. This huge crack appeared over the weekend, prompting officials to yellow tag 3 homes, meaning the residents can only have limited entry. Geologists right now expected to survey the hillside today to decide if evacuation orders are necessary. During Southern California's recent rainstorms, homes and cars were damaged by mudslides in nearby Beverly Crest as well. But look at the cracks you see from the end of that house toward the bottom of the screen all the way across the mountain. That does not look good. If that land gives way, those houses are in real jeopardy. So you can see why they're going out there today to make sure everybody's going to be safe. I don't even know if I would want to go in there to get my stuff back. That's how bad that is. Yikes.
Everything's right on the verge of, and they've closed so many roads. This is really, you really see how these rains can completely sort of change the face of an area. As you say, a lot of it's just super scary.
You see those
By the way,
cracks
that
there?
this
Yikes.
is a bizarre coincidence. That picture was my block. That's exactly where I lived in Los Angeles.
You used to live there?
Yeah, not at that house, but that house is owned by Travis Scott.
Oh, that's right. I remember you talking about that.
Yeah, that house is owned by Travis Scott. That hillside used to not have anything on it. And then Travis Scott built this, actually, developers built it. That's a great story because I was on the architectural committee and they came through with this proposal for this house. And look at it, it's massive, okay? It's like 20,000 square feet. And the average size of a house in the neighborhood is like 2,500 square feet, okay? So they come forward with this, and everybody looks at each other, and then they leave after a very detailed proposal, and the architectural committee has to approve it, and I'm on it. I'm not the head of it or anything. I'm just on it. But for some reason, they say to me, Mark, you're going to have to tell him that he can't build that big a house. It's just not consistent with the neighborhood. I'm thinking, why do I always asked in every homeowners association thing or any official body I'm part of to do the dirty work? So I tell him at a meeting, he comes back and we say, look, it's gorgeous, it's great, but it's just too big for this neighborhood. We can't approve it. And what does he say? Great.
Screw you, Thompson.
I'm going to sue the committee.
Oh, yep.
And I'm going to sue you all individually.
Ouch.
And he was serious, man. And so finally the committee let go of it, and they built this house. So the house you're looking at right now on YouTube, it was listed for $45 million. Yeah, wow. And then they couldn't get any buyers at $45 million, so they lowered the price to $40. They couldn't get any buyers at $40. They lowered it to $35. They couldn't get anybody at $35. They lowered it to $30. They changed real estate agents, and Travis Scott bought it for cash, I think, for $28 million.
Well, that's what you call karma, because look at the cracks in the hillside now. And didn't the builders have to do any work to shore up the hillside before
One
they
of the
built
reasons
this
that
behemoth?
we thought that it would never be developed. This is so weird that we're looking at this house, just insane. Yeah. I mean, literally, I live 2 doors down. The weird thing about this is that the geological assessment even that you'd have to do was so expensive and so extensive and so troubled that we thought there'd be no way they could develop that hillside. So everybody just thought, it's great. We have this empty hillside. It's beautiful land, and it's right there. And then along comes this developer and spent millions doing what you're talking about, which is building up this hillside and making sure everything. So they put huge caissons in the ground. I think it was $1 million per caisson to build this property.
Wow.
Just to fortify it. So what you said is true. Now, he might be okay. It seems like everything in his life just works out. But that, and they have 2 levels of parking. Can you see how there are 2 levels of parking? What winds around?
So
I always thought that was great.
It looks like it's like a mall. You drive down the street past all the regular houses, and then you go to the circular parking lot, and it looks like the whole house is hanging down the edge of the cliff.
Well, it's really cool. Look at it. You see how the entire house is below street level, so you don't see this huge house. It's all below street level. So you drive down the driveway, and you can park on P1 or P2, and I mean it's crazy. And there are 2 elevators. Those rectangular things are kind of sticking up. Those are elevators.
Yeah.
So you can take the elevator down to the main house. It's pretty wild. And he has a gym in there that looks like a fitness center. I mean, it's absolutely as big as 24-hour fitness.
Well, now 3 of these homes, I would assume it's the 3 we can see, are yellow tagged because this hillside is in danger of collapse.
Wow. There it is. Thank you, Tony.
Wow.
That's the property. Wow, this is incredible. Thank you for this. Finally, some news I can use on this show.
The crack starts at the bottom of that house, and it goes straight across the hill.
Look at this. The house is so gorgeous. And I used to take a walk every day and walk through that property as they were building it. Like I would know the workers. I would just wave to them, and I'd see everything as they built the movie theater, as they built the wine cellar, as they built the, look at it. It's spectacular.
It really is. It's very cool. I can see why there was a fight to get this thing built.
You can get mugged in your own parking garage, says you can. Steve says, nice house, but does it have a shed?
It's cool looking.
Oh, my God.
But yeah, I mean, think of all this. Look at all this beautiful. And it's
it was stunning. And
it looks like it's going down.
Yeah, on the left there, you can just see like that kind of thing, these burlwood tables, and there's all of these super cool. On the left of that, you see that it's kind of these wood slats. That's a huge, there it is. It's like a tunnel of wood that curves over, and then that's a live, living wall of vegetation on the right. I mean,
it's special.
Dude, it was strong. I mean, it was gorgeous.
Yeah, and look at it now.
And now it's in trouble.
Crack.
I mentioned to you that, we were burned out of that neighborhood. The entire neighborhood was, horribly affected by fire. Many houses lost, and we couldn't live in our house. The house at the top of that driveway, and then I'll shut up and we'll move on, that was burned to the ground. So you can see at the very top of the driveway to the right, as we look at the picture, that house is burned down. So very few houses survived.
So
and
that means most of them are probably new builds, looking at this shot.
It's pretty crazy. Anyway, all right.
Yeah.
Fascinating. And
so we'll keep our eye on what happens with this hillside. They're going to go out there and check it today and see if they'll allow people to, if they're going to issue evacuation orders, if they're going to keep it yellow tagged to allow people very limited access to these homes or not. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Bye-bye, Monster House. Right.
Yeah. Jeez.
In the Santa Cruz area, there is a former UC Santa Cruz student behind bars now in a disturbing case, murder at Seabright State Beach. Police believe Samuel Stone killed his 21-year-old girlfriend early Friday morning. She was found next to him near the water line and put on life support, but died shortly after she was arrived at the hospital. The 20-year-old suspect is facing homicide charges now. Police aren't saying what led up to this or even how this murder happened, but there is an update expected in this case later today. The Odysseus spacecraft has dispatched some new images from the moon, and they're pretty cool, I have to say. Earlier, we could only show you artist renderings. Well, now we get to show you one of the pictures that Odysseus took, and check it out. Yeah. Hello, Moon. Look at you go. There it is. The Odysseus taking some new images that it captured on the moon's surface During its approach to the moon, the vehicle...
And this is their new hoax.
Yeah, that's right, the moon
touched down
hoax.
on the moon Thursday. It became, of course, the first U.S.-made lander to do so since the Apollo era. But it was a private company, Intuitive Machines, that sent this one up. The grainy images shared by the company. The company had initially projected the lander could deliver the first images captured from the lunar surface in the hours after landing, but communicating with the spacecraft has proven challenging, and also they found out that when it touched down, it flipped over, so it's on its side.
The antennas
now.
are sticking into the ground.
You know, they do this to me all the time. I don't know what the hell
They
do it
every
for.
time they land on the moon. It's the wrong. They're the wrong way.
The science is ridiculous.
So anyway, but these are pictures you're seeing them on YouTube.
So pretty
Kim
cool
is
that
sharing
they
and
managed...
Tony is sharing. I don't know who's sharing, but we are sharing.
That's Tony. Yeah, we are sharing the
Yeah.
pictures. Pretty cool. I mean, yeah, it's a bummer that it's on its side. I don't know how they're going to fix that, but I guess it wasn't supposed to communicate past a certain point anyway. But the fact that we're able to get these pictures, even given that it had some issues, is pretty good.
Well, that's a glass half full kind of scientist right there. Guys, look, I know it was supposed to land on its feet. I know it landed on its side and all of our antenna and communication systems have been affected. But look, it's a blessing that we can get these pictures at all.
I'm telling you.
Well, I
Don't
think
negative, Nelly.
I just think that
Emil
Schauphausen. That's the kind
Society.
of he would not be happy with. Dr. Emil Schauphausen III would not be happy with that. Yeah, that's the way it looks. It's landed like that. If you're looking on YouTube, this is from NASA.
Isn't that nice that they have a little personal diagram for us? Let me tell you how it landed. Yeah.
I couldn't visualize what it meant when you said on your side. But that's important because a lot of their antennas are stuck into the lunar surface.
Yeah.
Look, it's pretty easy to fix that.
I still think that's cool. Yeah.
I mean, you just build another rocket, another 118 million.
Yeah.
You go up there and you just send somebody, or you get a robotic arm, and then you just tip this one forward and you come home. I mean, that's...
What is it, not
feels
2023?
Like
What?
Yeah.
Lastly, guess who's performing at the Oscars? Ryan Gosling set to perform I'm Just Ken from the film Barbie at the awards show. The track nominated for Best Original Song. The Academy Awards take place March 10th. So we'll get to see Ryan Gosling do his I'm Just Ken.
That's exciting.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. This report sponsored by Tenuta Vineyards in Livermore. We love them and we love the wine. Oh, yes, we do. The Mark Thompson, Why Are You Yelling Red? The Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson Pinot Grigio? And many, many other varietals.
As a matter of fact,
many more. They have 14 reds, 14 whites. You can go up to the winery in Livermore and taste them all, or you can call them. But either way, make sure you tell Rich and Nancy to smash it with your iron rod.
Smash it with your iron rod.
That's the phrase that pays.
Because when you say smash it with your iron rod, you get 10% off.
Love that.
And that's what we want. So call them at 925-699-4576. You can email Rich at tenutavineyard.com. You can find out about events. You can order some wine, and you can get your 10% off. Smash it with your iron rod.
I love that.
I'm wildly enthusiastic.
That's my
Indeed.
dad. It's my dad.
Oh, that's so funny. I'm Kim McAllister.
Thank you, Dad. Very good.
I'm wildly
All right.
enthusiastic.
I heard you the first time, Dad. Thank you
This
very much.
report is, it's sponsored by Tenuta Vineyards. I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
They had to close down an entire radio station to silence him. And now, he's here. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Thompson. The Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson?
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Jada had nothing to do with it.
Hey, Mark, it's George Santos here. A lot of people are telling me you're a liar.
That's pure speculation.
We're in better shape, but I don't think we're in wildly better shape.
I love it when you're angry.
Your Honor, I'd like to ask for a recess. Where are my weed smokers at?
What do you think I'm going to say to you?
Don't talk to me that way. That was very inappropriate.
That's not fake. That's real. Seriously, what the
I love it.
It was great. I loved it.
It was wrong, it was stupid, and I'm trying to be a better person.
It's fantastic.
Whoever is producing this thing has no idea what they're doing.
The science is ridiculous.
So good to have everybody in the mix. Don't want to wait too long. I've got a word about animals waiting. But before we get to that, as promised, this is Law and Disorder.
In the criminal justice system, the people,
pimps, addicts, thieves, bums, winos, girls who can't keep an address, and men who don't care,
are represented by two separate yet equally important groups.
A cop, a flatfoot, a bull, a dick, John Law. You're the fuzz, the heat, you're poison, you're trouble, you're bad news.
These are their stories.
He is a champion professional bowler, everybody. You got to get into that bowling. Pretty cool. He doesn't need to rent shoes or rent a ball. He's got it. He's a champion. Now, he's bowling in a tournament.
Can you make a lot of money as a bowler?
I think you can. I think you can do well. I think it's a subculture of sports that not many people are aware of. But I remember in the 70s seeing those huge checks delivered to a lot of those people on the Pro Bowlers Tour.
Wow. All right.
Well, he's professional bowler Brandon Novak, 35 years old. And he's in the middle of a tournament midway through. And he is arrested, everybody. That's right. He's arrested for child pornography. All right. Yeah,
what?
They got him. He was first indicted in Ohio in January. Now he's facing 15 felony charges. 5 charges are involved with minor and minor. It's all this minor stuff, which it's all gross and awful. But he was arrested midway through his second game at the 2024 U.S. Open, and it was in Indianapolis. I looked at the video, and you can't quite see him getting, but you see this commotion from other players, and that's what was happening. He withdrew from the competition, which is kind of what you have to do when you're arrested midway through.
Kind of, yes.
Yeah. But he still finished 36, everybody. Yeah. There he is. Looks like he's coming in at about 5'9.5". And the cops were first notified of Novak. Now, here it is, if you want to try to see it. Can you see it, the commotion to the right?
Well, something's going on.
Yeah, something's going on.
Everyone's looking over there, like, what's happening?
Yeah. But they don't stop bowling. You know,
no,
when
they're
you're focused.
They're going to keep
Look how good
these
guys are. Everybody rolls strikes. It's crazy. But it was all linked to his Facebook account being associated with child pornography. And anyway, he is in police custody. Meantime, the Illinois judge who reversed a rape conviction is removed from the bench after a panel finds that he circumvented the law completely. I know I'll be demonetized for all of this today. This is a show we'll lose money on, but I think these stories are important and do reflect parts of the society that we don't report on a lot for a lot of reasons. But this is a judge who really sparked outrage in the community because there was a guy convicted of rape involving a 16-year-old girl. And it was bizarre that he reversed the decision. Essentially, he said, I think it's fine with just time served, even though the judgment was for there to be way more than that.
How much time had been served?
I believe it was 100 and, let me just look here. The rapist, convicted rapist, engaged in multiple instances of this, and the judge was removed from the bench. The state judicial inquiry filed a complaint against the judge saying that the 148 days, in answer to your question, that the dude had spent in jail was punishment enough.
This
but,
is against a 16-year-old girl. Are you kidding me?
And the person convicted was supposed to have a 4-year sentence, okay?
Which isn't even enough. And not that a sexual assault of a grown woman is any different than a 16-year-old girl, but I'm just saying, like, that's awful. That's
of course. I couldn't agree more. It's the guy, his name is Drew Clinton, the guy who was he was 18 years old when the thing happened. And it's brutal. I agree. And there's the judge, Robert Adrian. And Adrian, as I say, got huge blowback in the community when this hit the news.
Good.
And they removed Adrian now from the bench. So they could have just sanctioned or in some way reprimanded Adrian, but instead they removed Adrian, which means that the message was really sent and received.
Days of looking the other way when you're talking about crimes against women, I hope have passed. And maybe I'm naive about that, but that gives me hope.
Aside from the ongoing crime against women, which takes away their reproductive freedoms.
Well, that too, yeah.
In Europe, we don't limit our scope in law and disorder to just domestic issues. Farmers clashing with cops. I don't know if you did this story or not. I had to step up for a second. Farmers clashing with cops in Belgium. They sprayed the officers with liquid manure, and they threw eggs at them. This is an ongoing thing with them because the European Union's agriculture ministers are looking for ways to modify the pesticides that are permitted in growing agriculture and in farming in Europe. Now, this may surprise you because if you're like me, you grew up with this sense that, well, America has the toughest standards. We have the best stuff. It's the myth of American exceptionalism, right? But the truth is that the Europeans, they have much tougher standards on what pesticides can be used in the growing of all of these crops that are used in agricultural farming, and in the economy that is associated with agriculture in the European Union. So
they do it so much better than we do.
The farmers are angry at the red tape and competition from cheap imports that also don't have to meet the high standards that the European Union farmers have to meet. So cops said that 900 tractors, and we're showing them to you now, had entered the city, many bearing down on the European Council building where the ministers were meeting. Smoke drifting through the air where cops in riot gear, sheltered behind concrete barriers and barbed wire, firing tear gas and water cannons at these protesting farmers. I mean, this is a big deal, okay? Many tractors lined up down main roads, blocking traffic. A few tractors forced their way through barriers. So this is an ongoing story, but you can see big pushback in the European Union from farmers there.
They sprayed all of the officers with that manure. They coated that square with that's all that brown stuff. Is that the manure that came that they sprayed with the police with?
Yes, ma'am. That is.
Gross.
They're making their point.
If I'm Wayne a cop, I'm calling in sick that day. No,
look
thank
at that.
you.
Tony's got this. They set stuff on fire. They set the manure on fire. It's brutal. I mean, this is hitting them where they live, which is in the pocketbook. And so they're saying, hey, you're letting all this other agricultural product into our country. You're not demanding the same kind of restrictions on pesticides they use on their farming products, and yet you're an agriculture and, commodities, if you want to think of it that way.
I'll say this, farmers know how to throw a protest.
Man, it's pretty brutal. Yeah, if you're not watching on YouTube, it's worth clicking over to check it out. It's pretty amazing. So hay, manure, and as in all the other stuff I've mentioned, and fire. Quickly, I want to finish up with the case brought against the NRA and Wayne LaPierre. As you know, he is the face of the NRA for so many years. His ridiculous, illogical, irrational, and despicable resistance to regulations on firearms was something that he championed, along with the untrammeled Second Amendment rights and, self-reliance and freedoms. But LaPierre actually was soaking the NRA for millions of dollars that he spent on the good life. private jets, lavish trips.
Is anyone surprised?
Outlandish expenditure, clothes. He spent nearly $275,000 on suits from a luxury Beverly Hills boutique called Xenia. And Italian food. Over 15 days, the NRA spent close to $6,000 at Landini Brothers Restaurant. Travel. He spent nearly $250,000 on flights around the world, including Italy, Budapest, the Bahamas, and Reno, Nevada. His NRA paid vacations were filled with stuff like this. He stayed on a super yacht, had a personal chef and personal watercraft. He had pricey gifts like a handbag, a $1,260 handbag that he purchased from Bergdorf Goodman.
I guess
fitness gear.
When you see all the money that you're giving to politicians, you think, I want some of that. You know, why not? Just free money to go around. Might as well live the high life.
No one called him out on it, and he was the face of the NRA. But now, in this court judgment, he's been fined, and he will have to repay millions of dollars.
Wow.
That is Law and Disorder for today.
Tune in again next time for more Law and Disorder on The Mark Thompson Show.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out there.
A lot going on. The Pro Bowler mid-tournament, the NRA spokesperson and head getting nailed, the farmers ticked off. Wow. A lot there in that Law and Disorder. Thank you, Tony, for rallying some of those photos. All right, Mondays are a big day around here. And
The Mark Thompson Show.
On Mondays, we like to check in on the animal kingdom in A Word About Animals.
Now, a word about animals on The Mark Thompson Show.
And how about it for Karen Dawn, everyone? She joins us with the good and the bad. There were some losses some really, the animal rights and animal activism and just the community that cares about animals lost some key figures in the last couple of weeks.
But we've still got Wayne LaPierre.
Yeah. Evil don't die.
I was so surprised to hear all that stuff about him not being a really great guy. I really was.
But there was, there's already, because for the heck of it, already a lot of love for your hair, apparently. Love the hair, they say.
Yeah. Yay,
Yeah.
I washed it this morning for a change. Elijah McClain. Now, the good thing about being outside is that Texas winters are heavenly. The bad side is that Elijah is out here with me finding lots to bark at, but I don't know if you can hear him. Can you hear him?
No, we don't hear him. It's okay. This is from Edward Lee, and Edward, big shout out for the super chat. He says, in memory of Flacco, New York City's beloved owl. Maybe we should start there. It is sad news.
You know what? It is. The reason I want to start with Steve Wise, if I may, is because
as usual, I didn't get the note on that. All right, go ahead. Yes.
Because, humans matter too, people tell me, and humans are animals. And because their deaths are so closely connected, Mark, and I want to tie them in together, if I may. Steve died on February 15th, and we didn't get a chance to talk about that last week because Monday was a holiday. But Steve was an animal rights attorney and well known enough that his death was also announced on the front page of the New York Times and certainly in Florida where he had lived. The reason his death is so relevant to Flacos is that whereas, there are people who say veganism is the bottom line of the animal rights movement and whatever, which I most certainly don't necessarily agree with. What Steve argued for beautifully in the courts of law, including the New York Supreme Court, was bodily liberty and bodily integrity. And that is what's so closely tied into Flaco's situation, is that Flaco, for most of his life, he wasn't free. And Steve died, before we learned about Flaco being killed. It would have been lovely to hear what he would have had to say on the whole issue, but he died about 10 days ago. But he was head of the Non-Human Rights Project, and I'd love people to go check it out. Steve taught animal law at Harvard, and there was a wonderful documentary on his life, a Penny Baker Hagedis documentary. And I'm not that familiar with their work, but I'm sure some of your regular listeners and chatters will be, called Unlocking the Cage. And fascinating documentary, completely enjoyable, not full of horrible animal cruelty stuff, utterly fascinating about Steve's battles on behalf of animals in courts of law. And you and I have spoken on this show about his battle to get Happy freed from the Bronx Zoo, which incidentally was the place that somebody did free Flaco from. And then Steve took that case all the way to the New York Supreme Court, where they did not win, but where they got two judges to dissent who would have ruled in favor of Happy. It's not just a matter of her getting out of the Bronx Zoo, which would have been an animal welfare issue, but he was arguing for her personhood, because under our current laws, human beings are persons and animals are things or objects. And that was Steve's main contention, that it's not right that animals, and he started with chimpanzees, who are so close to us, and elephants, who are so intelligent. He suggested that it was ridiculous that they are objects or things under the law. And he got a couple of New York Supreme Court judges to agree with him. And if he'd lived, it kills me that he died about getting close to 2 weeks ago, and he will not get to see his dream come true. But the Non-Human Rights Project continues, and is, of course, going to continue to battle for a legal system that does not see animals strictly as things. And there are other countries who have granted animals some actual rights, but as yet, our country has yet to do that. So they're still objects here, but that is starting to change. And when we see the outpouring, first we had the delight that Flaco was out flying around New York for a year. And I remember when you and I spoke about this on your show, Mark, I remember your absolute giggle of delight when you heard that he was out, soaring around the skies and looking in people's windows. And people were just delighted that he was out. Of course, people were scared that he was going to be killed. But there are certainly those of us who think that, the fact that he lived for a year before he died is highly relevant to this situation. And it was really interesting in that the New York Times article, the first one that came out online to announce his death, which I think was on Thursday, came out. I included a quote from it that I hope Tony can bring up. If not, I'm just going to paraphrase it. But it mentioned the size of Flaco's enclosure at that Central Park Zoo, which is run by the same people as the Bronx Zoo, the World Conservation Society.
You have that, Tony?
I did.
Yeah.
It doesn't, but that's my tweet about it, and we can go there. That's fine if Tony wants to bring back my tweet, because I put succinctly how I feel about it. But
it's so small, but you can see how tiny. I'm sorry.
No, you can. No, that's not his enclosure.
No, that
is him looking through.
Do you have the quote, Tony, that she sent? Do you not? You don't have it? No. Okay.
But we can talk about this for a second. This is Flaco looking through the enclosure not looking through somebody's window, and Nan Knighton into her apartment, and it's okay. And what I wrote next to that photo was just that, whereas the Bronx Zoo, the World Conservation Society, is out there saying, whoever let him out of his enclosure is responsible for his death. I say no, they were responsible for him having 1 year of actual life after 13 years spent in an enclosure that last week's New York Times article described as the size of a department store window display. This is the quote there. where they mentioned that where he was born and that he was originally put in with some other animals, but then later he was moved to an enclosure the size of a department store window near the Penguin House exit. And that is where somebody decided to cut the netting and let him out. And, if Flaco wanted to go back in because he liked getting his 3 square meals and feeling safe, he could have, and he wasn't stupid. But once he was out, he wasn't going anywhere back near that particular enclosure. And yes, he was in danger. Now, in the wild, owls probably fly around and bump into a tree limb occasionally. And if that happens, maybe they'll fall 15 feet. Unfortunately, if you bump into a skyscraper, you fall hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of feet. And it looks like that's what happened to Flaco. He took a wrong turn and he crashed into something that isn't in his natural environment and he died. But this is after having 13 years alone in a cell the size of a department store window and 1 year out flying around Manhattan. And I'm glad he got that. And I'm interested in knowing what folks in the chat think, because it seems that the vast majority of New Yorkers, while they're horribly distressed that he's been killed, we knew that had to come. He wasn't going to live for 40 years flying around Manhattan, but at least he got some freedom.
Yeah. It's an interesting dilemma that you point to or question. There is some of the graffiti art around him. I mean, you can't help but fall in love with him, You have 2 actually quite lovable creatures that have passed away, as I say in your report today. Steve Wise was just as remarkably gifted, as you suggest, erudite and top of the game attorney, representing a voice for the voiceless, right, for the animal kingdom. And then Flaco, I think I've been calling him Flacco, but Flaco is a creature that was granted, if you will, this freedom, as you've suggested it, for a year out in New York. Both environments, not natural habitats, I guess, on some level, but one so terribly restrictive. And then you make the point, and I think so beautifully, I'm just reflecting sort of out loud on what you've just said, which is he could have gone back if he wanted to. These owls are super smart and able to find their way. A lot of these creatures, when it comes to that world of finding their way back, can do it. Now, to be fair, it's a pretty brutal environment, that urban environment. I mean, maybe, I don't know, Bangkok, I guess, might be worse or something. But it's pretty brutal, New York City. Somehow he survived, and look how beautiful he is for all that time.
And there he is, it takes you a second there to see where it looks like it could be an enclosure. But no, there he is on a fire escape, just hanging out. And, there's no question that if he wanted to go back to his little jail cell, he could have done that. He could have gone and hung around near it and they would have let him in. But he made his needs and his choices clear. Now, and it's interesting, this is how I feel about it. And this is what Steve argued for, which is just bodily liberty. And it's funny because, animal rights activism is so often closely associated with veganism, and that's the way I choose to eat but my reason for choosing veganism, and you mentioned actually that you don't think there's anything wrong with eating your neighbor's, rescues hen's eggs, and I feel exactly the same way. The reason I choose veganism is because in our society, eating any sort of animal food means locking animals up for life. And I don't think hunting's as bad as that. And hunting, I made my jokes about Wayne LaPierre, and that includes sport hunting and hideous stuff like that. But certainly, I don't think going out and killing your family's dinner is nearly as cruel as what we generally do, which is lock these animals up for life so that we can eat them. And here we had an animal locked up for his life so we could look at him. And I don't know how anybody could be angry at the person who let him out, but I'm not here to preach, and I am interested in knowing what people who are not animal rights activists feel about that kind of thing, and if that is somewhere we find common ground with people, that locking animals up to gawk at them isn't okay by most people's, most reasonable people's views, but we still do it anyway.
Well, then you get the question, especially now with conservation being an issue in so many different ways, an issue with many facets. One of them is, well, without zoos, sadly, you would have none of these creatures. Literally, the reproduction is manufactured or manipulated by the zoo culture. And of course, as you know where I am, I agree, but I see how the water gets a little murkier as we begin to essentially bulldoze these creatures into extinction. The only vestige of reproduction you have, and for the live creatures, is in zoos. And then there's a whole range of zoos, isn't there, Karen Dawn? I mean, they're look, this poor creature, Flaco, was in this, and I'll shut up and let you talk. But it was in this small enclosure. But aren't there those that have larger, kind of, sort of arboretum size enclosures? Or
Flaco is at Central Park Zoo, which is owned by the same people as the Bronx Zoo, which is the World Conservation Society, and this is supposed to be the top of the line. So if Flaco was in an enclosure, which according to the New York Times was the size of a window, a department store window, and the Associated Press described as the size of twice his wingspan, or a VW bus, at the top of the line zoo, I'd say no, there aren't all different types. Sure, some zoos are much worse than others. There's roadside zoos, which are absolutely disgusting, which should be without doubt banned. But for what you're saying about animals and extinction, that's what sanctuaries are for, where we can protect animals. And unfortunately, in our extremely polarized world, we have situations where we have zoos where animals are simply put on display so that we can look at them. And yes, they do some conservation work as well, but they don't look after the welfare of the individual, when the welfare includes company of other species, the ability to exercise their natural behaviors, like being able to fly if you're a bird. Or we have sometimes people who run sanctuaries, and there are those who say, oh, at sanctuaries, you shouldn't be able to go look at the animals. And of course, as usual, as you'll hear me so often say, the truth lies somewhere in the middle, the Tao, the middle way. We need situations where we can protect animals and where we can encourage them to breed without actually, forcing a male into a small female enclosure so that he can rape her and we can watch. But we can certainly encourage animals to breed, and we can keep them safe from predators if they are in a situation where they're actually endangered. And also give them wonderful lives. And the problem is, what's a wonderful life? And I generally, when people ask me that, I'll usually go to the question, because I am somebody who believes in a circle of life rather than a hierarchy of life, and I don't think that humans are fundamentally different from other animals. I say, well, what would the answer be if we were talking about a human? And it certainly wouldn't be to be unable to move in the natural way that you were built to move. For a human, it would be running or walking, and for an owl, it's flying. And it certainly wouldn't be in a enclosure twice the size of your arm length. And it would be where you could make your own choices about who you wanted to hang out with. And if you fall in love and you have family, you don't get separated from them. So I don't think it's as hard as society tries to make it out to be, to do the right thing by members of other creatures and also take into account things like protecting them. I think we can do both. And we certainly weren't doing both in Flaco's case. And just letting him out of that enclosure, was it ideal? No. Did it mean he was eventually going to probably be killed? Yes. But was it the best choice under those ridiculous circumstances that the supposedly one of the top zoos in the world had him in an enclosure like that? I think that person did Flaco and his kind and his ilk a favor. And I'm glad to get the chance to talk about that here.
It's a very complex issue. And your example about human beings is not theoretical. They did put human beings in zoos. You can look at what happened. I think I referenced it earlier in the Belgian Congo, where that's one example, but there are other examples as well. I mean, humans in zoos.
Astoundingly, there's a
pygmy populations, native populations.
Sadly, just last century, the Bronx Zoo in New York had, I think his name was Bengo. I'm trying to remember his name, but they had a young pygmy man in a zoo.
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh,
that was
absolutely.
considered okay 100 years ago. I think we're going to look back at Flaco on display in a tiny little enclosure similarly. And I'm not saying he's exactly the same as this pygmy man. Anybody who knows me knows that I don't think humans are above other animals anyway. So if I was saying they were the same, I wouldn't be insulting the man. I might be insulting the owl. But yeah, we've done things in the past with humans, and now that we never would, it's time for us to look and say, why do we think it's okay to do that with members of other species? Because it's not.
Thank you for civilizing us today. I must wrap up. Thank you, Karen Dawn. It is Dawn Watch on Facebook. She has a vibrant community there, but you can also find her dawnwatch.com. And if you want news of how the media is talking about animals and just animals in general, great thing. And of course, her book is now being updated, and when it is complete, we will feature it prominently here. Karen Dawn, thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Matt.
That's a word about animals today.
Join the flock again next time for a word about animals on the Mark Thompson Show.
I don't know what to say. We're so late, but I just I love that we got a lot of stuff in. Just not fair that tool Travis Scott gets a huge enclosure. And Flaco gets solitary for 13 years and only a year of freedom. Way to go, America. Yeah, America. Oh, my God. Always makes you think, though. We will definitely continue with that. Wes, what up, Wes? Wes for the $5 super sticker.
Big shout out.
Thank you. We're going to be demonetized for this show, so if you're listening, you want to hit us with it. In memory of Flaco, New York City's beloved owl.
Big shout
Thanks,
out.
Edward Lee, for all your contributions today. Luis, R.I.P. Flaco, safe flight over the Rainbow Bridge. Thank
Big
you,
shout
Colin.
out.
Yeah. The After Party Live is next, so jump on over for that one.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
I'm glad I found this show, says Karina. Yeah, and €2. How exotic euros. I love that. Until tomorrow. Bye-bye.